It happened so fast, I barely had time to scream. One moment, I was standing on the porch of the rented cabin, laughing at something Jake said, sunlight in my eyes, coffee in my hand, Milo resting at my feet like always. And the next? I was on the ground. Hard. Wind knocked out of me. Coffee spilled across my sweater. My back scraping the wooden deck. Jake shouting. And Milo? Milo was standing over me. Growling. Are you crazy? Jake's voice cracked as he rushed toward me. What the hell was that? Milo didn't move. Didn't back down. He stood between me and Jake, tense, his golden fur raised along his shoulders, his tail low and stiff, teeth bared but not snarling. Protective. But against who? Jake? Me? I couldn't tell. I blinked, trying to catch up with my own thoughts. I was still on the floor. My palms stung. My sweater was soaked. Milo had shoved me, no doubt about that, full force into the deck as if he were tackling an intruder. His 70-pound body had hit me like a freight train. And yet, he hadn't hurt me. He could have. Easily. But he hadn't. Get him away from you. Jake barked. He just attacked you, Anna. Milo glanced over his shoulder at me. His expression softened for a moment. As if checking, are you okay? And just like that, the tension dropped from his body. He stepped back, head lowered, ears folded, tail tucked just slightly, not in fear. In regret. He had meant to stop something. But what? Jake knelt beside me and reached for my arm. Milo growled again, a deep, guttural warning. Back off, Jake snapped at him. Stupid mutt. Jake, I coughed, trying to sit up. My back throbbed, but nothing felt broken. Stop. He's not like this. He's never done anything like this. Jake scoffed. You're defending him? He knocked you down. What if your head hit the rail? I'm fine. You're not fine. I said I'm fine. The silence after that hung thick in the air. Milo stood off to the side now, watching. Not aggressive. Not afraid. Just alert. Jake was staring at me like I'd lost my mind. And maybe I had. Because the one thing I kept coming back to wasn't why Milo had done it. It was the way he looked at me after. That knowing look. That guilt. That purpose. The day had started perfectly. Jake had surprised me with a weekend cabin trip to get away from the city and unplug. He'd rented a cozy little A-frame deep in the woods, all rustic charm and forest views. Milo had come, of course. I didn't go anywhere without him. He was my shadow, my comfort, my one constant in the mess that had been the last few years. When I lost my dad, Milo curled against my ribs every night until the nightmares stopped. When I broke down crying in the middle of grocery store aisles or at green lights that turned red too fast, Milo never judged, only leaned into my legs like a reminder, still here. Still real. He wasn't just a dog. He was home. Jake, on the other hand, had always been lukewarm. Not about me, or so he said. But about dogs in general. He's too clingy, Jake would mutter when Milo tried to sit between us on the couch. Why does he stare like that? He asked once when Milo watched him make drinks in the kitchen. He's smart, but creepy smart, he joked. Like he's judging everything I do. I laughed it off most of the time. But part of me noticed. The way Milo watched Jake. Like he saw something I didn't. Like he knew something I wasn't ready to admit. And now, he'd pushed me. In front of Jake. In front of the one person who'd been telling me for months, you baby that dog too much. And I had no way to explain it. Because Milo didn't snap. He didn't bite. He didn't even bark. He just acted. Sudden. Forceful. Intentional. Jake helped me back into the cabin, grumbling under his breath the whole time. Milo followed a few steps behind, staying low, careful, like he wasn't sure if he was in trouble. I didn't scold him. Couldn't. Because something didn't add up. Jake slammed the sliding door shut and turned to me. You can't keep pretending he's harmless, Anna. He just attacked you. He didn't attack, I said quietly. Jake blinked. You're bruised. You were lying on the deck, in shock. He jumped on you. He was stopping me. From what? Having a conversation with my girlfriend on the porch. I flinched. Jake softened his voice. Look, I know you love that dog. I get it. But this isn't okay. He walked into the bathroom and slammed the door behind him. I sank into the couch and looked at Milo. He crept toward me. Ears back. Head low. And gently placed his chin on my knee. I stroked the fur along his head. Why did you do it, boy? His eyes met mine. Soft. Sad. Knowing. The rest of the weekend was tense. Jake barely spoke to me. He wouldn't look at Milo at all. We cut the trip short. Back at my apartment, things didn't go back to normal. Jake started calling less. When he did, he always asked, "Is the dog around?" in that flat voice that sounded like a challenge. Milo, for his part, never changed. He still followed me from room to room. Still lay across my feet at night. Still curled beside me when I sat on the couch. But something in me had changed. Every time I looked at him, I remembered the porch. The way he moved. The force, yes, but also the focus. And I kept thinking. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He was trying to stop something. A week later, Jake came over again. We ordered takeout. Watched a movie. Pretended things were normal. Then Jake said it. We need to talk about Milo. I paused the movie. He turned toward me. I can't be in a relationship where I feel threatened in my own girlfriend's home. You're not threatened. You just don't like him. He doesn't like me, Anna. And now I know why. He's not just jealous. He's territorial. Controlling. And frankly, dangerous. My chest tightened. Are you saying I have to choose? Jake didn't answer right away. But his silence said everything. That night, Milo slept beside me as always. And I whispered into the dark, "What were you trying to tell me?" Because I was starting to wonder if Jake hadn't been right about Milo's behavior. But completely wrong about why. Jake didn't come over for 3 days. When he finally did, he brought flowers. Not for me, for Milo. Peace offering, he said, holding out a cheap bouquet of sunflowers like that would mean anything to a dog. Milo stared at him through the half-open door. Not growling. Not wagging his tail either. Just still. Watching. Judging. Jake knelt down slowly, like he was being filmed. Hey buddy. No hard feelings, okay? Milo didn't move. Jake extended the flowers an inch closer. And Milo turned his head away. Okay, that's rude, Jake muttered as he stood up, brushing off his knees. He doesn't trust easily, I said. You mean he doesn't trust me? I opened the door wider and let him in. Milo walked to his usual spot by the window and laid down, eyes following Jake with quiet intensity. I tried to laugh it off. But something about it didn't feel funny anymore. The tension simmered all evening. We made dinner. Watched half an episode of something I didn't pay attention to. Jake talked about work, his boss, his plans for our summer trip. I smiled in the right places, nodded, offered the occasional MHM. But every time Milo lifted his head to watch Jake, even the slightest movement, Jake's shoulders tightened. He always stare like that? Jake asked, not taking his eyes off the TV. Only when he's not sure about someone. Jake chuckled. But it didn't sound amused. When Jake leaned in to kiss me goodnight before heading out, Milo stood. He didn't bark. didn't growl. Just walked between us. And sat. Jake stepped back. You've got to be kidding me. Diesel, sit, I said gently, but firmly. He already was. Unmoving. Eyes locked on Jake like he was trying to read something deeper. Jake shook his head and backed toward the door. I can't deal with this. He's not just a dog anymore. He's your bodyguard. I stayed quiet. Because, maybe he was. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed everything from the cabin, the way Milo had jumped on me, the way he placed himself between me and Jake, the way he hadn't shown any of those behaviors before Jake got close. He hadn't lost control. He'd had a reason. And I was starting to think I should have been listening sooner. The next morning, I called my mom. She'd always loved Milo, she was the one who helped me adopt him from the shelter 2 years ago. Mom, I said, has Milo ever acted weird around anyone? I mean, protective? Protective, sure. But never aggressive. Why? I hesitated. He jumped on me last weekend. Knocked me to the ground. Anna. Her voice sharpened. Are you okay? I'm fine. He didn't hurt me. I think he was, stopping me. Jake was near me. Milo's been acting strange around him. There was a long pause. Then my mom said, well, dogs know things. They notice stuff we don't. Especially when they're bonded to you like he is. Like what kind of stuff? She was quiet again. Then, carefully, body language. Energy. Scent changes. Dishonesty. Fear. Scent? Stress smells different. Anger. Even lies, maybe. Milo smart, Anna. Maybe too smart. I hung up feeling worse. Not because of what she said. But because part of me had already known it was true. 2 nights later, Jake showed up unexpectedly. He knocked. Hard. Quick. Milo leapt to his feet before I could even get to the door. Hey, I said as I opened it. Didn't know you were coming over. I called, he said flatly. You didn't answer. I was walking Milo. Jake stepped inside without being invited. Look, we need to talk. Milo didn't move from the hallway. Just watched. I crossed my arms. Okay. Talk. Jake sighed. This isn't working. Me feeling like I have to compete with your dog for attention. For trust. It's ridiculous. I never asked you to compete. No, but you let him push me away. I let him warn me. That stopped him. What's that supposed to mean? I stepped back. He's never acted like this with anyone else. Not my mom. Not my friends. Not even delivery drivers. Jake scoffed. You think he's some kind of psychic now? I think he's trying to tell me something. And I'm finally listening. Jake's eyes narrowed. So what? You think I'm dangerous? Milo growled, low, not loud, but unmistakable. Jake froze. You should go, I said. Unbelievable. He turned to the door, then stopped. You're choosing him over me? I'm choosing the one who never lied to me. Jake left. And he didn't come back. A week passed. Then another. My apartment felt quieter, but not empty. Milo had stopped pacing. Stopped growling at shadows. Stopped placing himself between me and every moving object. He relaxed. So did I. I didn't miss the fights. The tension. The way I'd started watching my own words before Jake could snap at them. Looking back, I realized I'd started walking on eggshells months ago. Milo had just noticed it first. I went back to the shelter where I'd adopted Milo, just to talk, to remember where we started. The woman behind the counter smiled when I told her his name. Milo, she said. He was one of the hardest to place. I frowned. Why? He didn't trust men. Not easily. We think he came from an abusive home before he was rescued. Never had a mark on him, but he'd flinch when a man raised his voice. I stared at her. I guess he still knows, she added. I left with tears in my eyes. Back at home, I sat on the floor and pulled Milo into my lap. He let out a soft huff and leaned into me, heavy and warm. You knew, didn't you? I whispered. Even before I did. He blinked slowly. Peaceful. At ease. For the first time in weeks. I looked at the small scar above his ear, the one I'd always wondered about. Maybe someone had raised a hand before. Maybe someone had yelled too loud. And maybe Jake had reminded him of something he couldn't explain, but couldn't ignore either. He hadn't pushed me to hurt me. He'd pushed me because he loved me. Because he knew something was wrong. And he wouldn't stop, until I understood. I always thought I was a good judge of character. But apparently, my dog was better. Much better. Because as I sat in the living room flipping through Jake's old texts, something inside me began to shift. Not just regret. Not just the sadness of a relationship unraveling. But disbelief. And then, clarity. It started with a phone call. Not to me. To my voicemail from Jake's ex. Hey, Anna, the message began, her voice shaky. I know we don't know each other, and I debated for days whether I should call, but I think you deserve to know who you're dealing with. Jake isn't who he pretends to be. She went on, calmly, without drama. She talked about how he could be charming, yes, but also manipulative. How he controlled conversations, twisted stories, gaslit her into thinking she was always overreacting. He was never physical, she added. But he wanted control. Over everything. My friends. My routines. My feelings. There was a long pause. Then, if your dog doesn't like him, believe him. Click. I just sat there. Phone in hand. Stomach sinking. And suddenly, all the little moments came rushing back, Jake belittling my routines, mocking my goals, subtly pressuring me to skip time with my family, calling me too sensitive when I tried to set boundaries. I had brushed it off. All of it. But Milo hadn't. I looked over at him now, sleeping peacefully on the rug by the window. He wasn't anxious anymore. Wasn't tense. Because Jake was gone. And he knew. He'd known before I did. That night, I pulled out a box I hadn't touched in months, a small wooden chest filled with photos, notes, old journals, and yes, some of Jake's things he'd left behind. I didn't want them anymore. But I needed to see them. To remember clearly. Without rose-colored filters. There were sticky notes he used to leave on the fridge. You should eat better. Don't forget to clean up before I come over. There were texts. Can you not post stuff like that on Instagram? Why do you let the dog on the bed? That's gross. At the time, I thought he was just blunt. Now I saw the pattern. He didn't want me to feel bad. He wanted me to feel small. I closed the box and pushed it aside. Milo lifted his head, watching. And for the first time in days, I felt okay. The next morning, I went for a walk with Milo down the long path near the river trail, his favorite. He trotted ahead, tail swaying, stopping every so often to sniff something invisible and important. He seemed lighter. Like a weight had lifted from both of us. And maybe it had. As we walked, I thought about all the signs I'd missed. Milo pacing the floor every time Jake raised his voice, Milo placing himself between us on the couch. Milo standing by the door, blocking Jake's way out one night after an argument, like he wanted to keep me safe. It had never been random. It had always been intentional. Milo had been warning me. And I hadn't understood. We reached the old wooden bench overlooking the water and sat together in silence. The wind rustled through the trees. The river shimmered in the light. Birds chirped somewhere above. And Milo rested his head on my lap, letting out a long, slow breath. "You knew," I whispered, running my fingers through his fur. "You knew before I did." He shifted slightly, eyes soft, ears relaxed. "You jumped on me to protect me." "Not from Jake's fists, he never hit me, but from something worse." Milo blinked slowly. His control. His manipulation. His words. Another blink. "People think dogs only protect us from physical danger. But you protected me from emotional danger." His tail gave a soft, lazy wag. And I felt the tears come. I let them fall. Not out of sadness, not entirely. But out of relief. Relief that I was safe, relief that I was seen, relief that someone, even if he couldn't speak, had been watching over me the entire time. On the way back, we passed another couple walking their retriever. The woman smiled warmly at Milo. "He's beautiful," she said. "Thank you." "How old?" "Almost 6. She leaned down to scratch under his chin. "He's got that wise old soul thing. Some dogs just get it, you know?" I smiled. "Yeah. He does." That evening, I received a text from Jake. "Hey. Can we talk? One last time?" I stared at it for a long time. Then typed. "No." Milo already said everything I needed to hear. I hit send. Blocked the number. And let it go. I curled up on the couch with Milo, pulling a blanket over us both. Outside, the world felt quieter than it had in months. Inside, I finally felt whole. And safe. Because I understood now. He hadn't jumped to hurt me. He hadn't growled out of jealousy. He hadn't stood between us because he was being possessive. He'd done all those things because he saw what I couldn't, or wouldn't. He protected me when I didn't know I needed protecting. And he wouldn't stop until I understood. Now I did. The hardest part about seeing someone clearly is realizing how long you chose not to. It's like waking up from a dream and finding bruises you don't remember getting, faint imprints from moments that didn't seem like much at the time, but in hindsight, tell the whole story. Jake's words, his timing, his silences. All of it, subtle as a storm cloud before the thunder hits. And now? Now I saw it all. Thanks to Milo. I didn't plan to reply to Jake's message, I'd already said what I needed. But some part of me, the part that still believed in loose ends being tied, knew this wouldn't be over until I faced it. So I texted him the next morning. "You want to talk?" "Fine. But not here." He responded instantly. "Neutral place? Coffee shop?" "No. The dog park. 4 p.m. bring nothing but honesty." I knew he'd hate it. He wasn't a dog person. He didn't like noise, unpredictability, mess. But that was the point. Jake wouldn't be in control there. He'd have to meet me, and Milo, on our terms. Milo trotted beside me as we walked to the park. He could sense something was different. He didn't pull on the leash. Didn't sniff every tree like usual. He stayed close, his steps matching mine, shoulder brushing my thigh now and then like a quiet reassurance, "I've got you." I looked down at him. "Just listen, okay? Don't jump this time." He looked up, tail swishing once. And I knew he understood. Jake was already there, leaning against the fence near the quiet side of the park. He wasn't wearing his usual confident smile. Just a half frown and sunglasses he didn't take off. I hated how good he was at pretending. Milo stiffened as soon as we got close. His pace slowed. His body pressed closer. I unhooked his leash as we entered the park, letting him roam free like the dozen other dogs area. "You don't have to hit someone to hurt them." He flinched. "I never felt safe telling you how I felt," I said. "I kept shrinking so you wouldn't feel challenged." You made me second-guess every decision, every instinct. And when I started to pull away, you tried to make me think I was being irrational." Jake looked away. And the entire time, Milo saw it. Long before I admitted it to myself. "He's just a dog." "No, he's not. He's the only one who stayed by my side when I was hurting and didn't try to change me. He didn't ask for anything. He just watched. Waited. And when you crossed a line, he was the only one brave enough to push me away from it." Jake stared at me, jaw tight. "You're letting a dog decide your relationships now?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm letting myself decide." And Milo helped me remember how. The park felt louder suddenly, not because of the dogs, but because I'd finally said it. The thing I'd been afraid to say since the cabin. That I'd seen the truth, that I was walking away from it, and that I had a choice now. Jake exhaled slowly. "So that's it." "That's it." He nodded. "Okay." He turned to leave. Then paused. He would have turned on anyone, you know. If he thought they were taking you away. "No," I said. "Only you." Milo walked up beside me as Jake disappeared down the sidewalk. He sat at my feet. Calm. Collected. Content. "Thank you," I whispered. He leaned his head gently into my leg. And I realized. He hadn't stopped watching because he was afraid Jake would hurt me. He had stopped watching because he finally knew I wouldn't let it happen. We stayed at the park a while longer. Milo joined a game of chase with 2 Labradors and a border collie. For the first time in weeks, he looked playful again, tail high, paws skimming the grass, his deep chest rising and falling with happy exhaustion. I sat on a bench and just breathed. Not as someone who had to perform or defend or explain herself. But as someone who was finally free. A young girl passed by with her father, pointing at Milo. "Look, Daddy. That one's like a lion." The man laughed. "He's big, huh?" "He's guarding her," the girl said. Her father smiled at me politely. I smiled back. And felt something soft settle in my chest. She was right. Later that evening, back at the apartment, I made tea and lit a candle. Milo flopped onto the couch beside me, his body warm and heavy. I pulled out my notebook. Wrote. He never said a word, but he didn't need to. He jumped when I was too still. He growled when I smiled through pain. He stood between me and a lie until I was ready to walk away from it. He didn't protect me from violence. He protected me from someone who didn't see me. And when I finally saw myself again, he stopped standing guard. Because he knew I had returned. Naderlich. Hier ist das große Finale. The first night after Jake was officially gone, the silence in the apartment felt different. It wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't suffocating. It was clean. Like someone had opened a window and let out all the noise I hadn't realized I'd been carrying for months. No footsteps pacing with tension. No sharp sighs at how I arranged the dishes. No side glances when I laughed too loud. Just me. And Milo. He curled next to me on the couch, head in my lap, eyes closed. We didn't need to talk, and even if I could have put the feeling into words, I wouldn't have. There was something sacred about the quiet now. I ran my hand along his back, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breath. "You did it," I whispered. "You kept me safe. Even from myself." His ear twitched. Then came that low, soft, satisfied sigh he always gave when the world felt right. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight spilling through the windows and the smell of morning rain lifting from the pavement outside. Milo was already up, sitting at the foot of the bed like he'd been watching me sleep, like he always did. But this time, something in his posture was different. He wasn't tense. He wasn't alert. He was at ease. Almost like he knew, it's done. I made breakfast. 2 eggs for me, 1 scrambled for him, which he accepted with gentle dignity. No barking. No pawing. Just a quiet presence at my side. Later, we took our usual walk. The path through the trees felt brighter. The colors sharper. The sky a little more open. I passed the park bench where I'd once sat wondering if I was losing my mind. Now, I knew I'd been finding it again. And Milo had been the thread that pulled me back. We sat on the bench a while. Milo rested his chin on my leg and stared off into the distance, eyes half closed. At peace. You knew, didn't you? I said softly. From the moment you met him. I remembered it so clearly now, that first day Jake came to my apartment. Milo hadn't barked. He hadn't lunged. But he'd stood still, body rigid, ears high. And he'd never relaxed again. I used to think it was jealousy. Now I knew better. It had been protection. And then, when I hadn't listened? He jumped on me. The porch at the cabin, the spilled coffee, the sharp breath knocked out of my lungs. Jake's shout. Milo's growl. I had thought he was misbehaving. But he had been intervening. Stopping something I couldn't see yet, or didn't want to. He had chosen the moment carefully, not when we were arguing, not when Jake was alone with him, but when we were standing close, too close, and something in Jake's body language must have changed. Something Milo recognized. And decided to stop. Now, weeks later, it all made sense. The tension, the pacing, the watchfulness. It hadn't been possessiveness. It had been strategy. He was reading the room when I couldn't. That afternoon, I sat down with my journal again. The words came more easily now. They say dogs can smell fear, but what they don't say is that some dogs can smell lies, intent, manipulation. Some dogs love you so much, they won't let you walk into fire just because it looks like warmth. Milo didn't jump to scare me. He jumped because I wasn't seeing what he saw. And he wouldn't stop, until I understood. I started doing more things just for me again. Going to yoga, calling old friends, sitting outside with a book and letting the sun touch my skin without apology. Milo was with me through all of it. But more relaxed now. More playful. He chased birds in the park again, he rolled in the grass, he even let a stranger scratch behind his ears, something he would have never allowed weeks ago. It was like he'd been holding tension in his body, too. And now that I was free, so was he. One evening, I invited my mom over for dinner. She hadn't been to the apartment since before the breakup. She noticed the change immediately. You look lighter, she said as she stepped inside, taking in the plants I'd moved closer to the window, the bookshelf I'd reorganized, the laughter in my voice that hadn't been there before. I smiled. I feel lighter. Milo came to greet her, tail wagging softly, then walked over to his corner to chew his rope in peace. He's calmer now, she observed. He knows I'm safe. Later, over wine and leftovers, I told her everything. The warning signs, the voicemail from Jake's ex, the confrontation at the dog park, how Milo had changed once Jake was gone. She listened without interrupting, then nodded. You always said Milo was the smartest dog you'd ever met, she said. You just didn't realize how much he was paying attention. I do now. She leaned over and scratched behind his ears. Good boy, she whispered. He closed his eyes. That night, I sat on the porch of my apartment, the same porch where I used to stand, wondering if I was just too sensitive. Too emotional. Too much. Now I knew I'd never been too much. I'd just been understood by the wrong person. And the right dog. Milo padded out and sat beside me, eyes on the stars. I didn't say anything. Just reached over and rested my hand on his head. And felt his soft breath rise beneath my palm. We sat there for a long time. No need for words. Because everything important had already been said, in growls, in footsteps, in loyalty that never wavered. People say dogs are man's best friend. But I think that undersells it. Some dogs are more than friends. They're witnesses. They remember who hurt you when you don't. They keep score without holding grudges. They forgive faster than you deserve, and stay longer than anyone else ever has. Milo didn't just save me from falling that day on the porch. He saved me from staying in something that was slowly breaking me. And he didn't stop trying. Until I listened.